Last week we talked about which team who lost in week 1 had the most to be concerned about. Here in week 2, which team who won in week 2 after losing in week 1 is the most genuine. Let's discuss that. Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, CBSSports.com, NFL columnist Clark Judge, CBS Sports' Ian Eagle. Glad to be with you here on the End Zone. And guys, when you look at the teams that struggled in week 1, but then came back with a win in week 2 to avoid that 0-2 hole that people always talk about as being such a struggle to make the playoffs, Clark, which team struck you as the most genuine, as that's who they're going to be?
The Houston Texans. I mean, I was really concerned after week 1 when they lost to the Jets, and they didn't just lose, and they got drilled, offensive and defensive. They didn't do anything right. And people told me, this is a soft team. You know, they can't play with physical teams. Well, Tennessee is a physical ball club, and you go in there and you win. Now, I know the concerns here. They can't stop the run. They're 32nd. They're 32nd in overall defense. They're not running the ball either. But the fact of the matter is they're 1-1. That's all that I care about. And they're in a tough division. I have them making the playoffs this year. I think they will. And what I like most about them, the next 2 games, Jacksonville, Oakland, both at home.
They were one of those popular picks, I felt, during the offseason that people started to get behind because of Gary Kubiak. This is a pivotal year. Schaub in this system, a lot of talent offensively and individual talent on the other side of the ball. Obviously, it's not translating right now. Defensively, they are lost, and they're going to have to improve. Offensively, I have no concerns with Houston the rest of the way. They're going to score points this year. The running game will get going. They'll strike a little bit more of a balance. The passing game, forget about it. I know it's a huge if Matt Schaub stays healthy, you're looking at a 4,000-yard passing season.
He's never done it before.
That's the issue. It's a huge if, and we know with Andre Johnson, if he just gets any kind of headlines around the NFL, he probably will be considered the best all-around receiver in the National Football League, and that's no offense to Randy Moss and others. Right now, pound for pound, I think Johnson's #1 on that list.
You know, one of those others would be Larry Fitzgerald, and on the Cardinals, who looked completely different week 2 to week 1, and maybe it's the opponent, maybe it was because Jacksonville's nowhere near where San Francisco is.
No.
But for me, the fact, and this is why I picked Arizona as the biggest turnaround, the most genuine turnaround. They're coming off the Super Bowl, so the way they played at the end of last season was impressive. But the fact that they went west to east in that 1 o'clock start, which we always talk about. And if I'm not mistaken, last year, before the playoffs, they were 0-5 going to the East Coast. They hammered the Jaguars to the point where they could take out Kurt Warner in the 3rd quarter and preserve the record that he had achieved. That offense is going to be great. I think that's what that offense is going to look like all year because those receivers are healthy, which they were not in week 1. The question is, can they stop you on defense? They stopped Frank Gore in week 1. That makes me think that that run defense is going to be very good this year. Yeah,
I mean, I think that was an achievement what they did because last year, remember, they played in Washington, they lost. So they stayed here for a week, and then they go to the Jets, and they got shredded.
Brett Favre had a career high in touchdown passes.
They're down 35-0 at that. To me, doing that, and it's in and of itself, was an achievement. I don't care. Jacksonville's a bad team. They are
That's a bad football team.
But you have to win those games, and they did win that game. The plus side for them is that they're in a division where anyone can win, and Hasselbeck's hurt, and so it's wide open.
San Francisco's much better this year.
San Francisco's much better. The downside, you and I have talked about this, and I'll bring an eye in on this one, is the history of Super Bowl losers is horrendous, you know? And so they come, they finished well last year, but so did most Super Bowl losers. They finished well to get into that game. This team they're up against a real hurdle here, and that hurdle is one of the last 8 Super Bowl losers has made the playoffs, and that was Seattle.
We're going to find out how good they are this week because Sunday Night Football, Indianapolis comes to University of Phoenix Stadium.
Well, I think Arizona's going to have to win the division to make the playoffs. I really believe that. They're not getting in as a wild card. There are teams that are better than them around the NFC that will finish better than them record-wise when it's all said and done. I had a tough time picking the team for this category, and I'm going to go with Chicago based on opponent and based on circumstance. We know what happened in week 1 against Green Bay. Everybody's on Jay Cutler right now, and rightfully so. The way he handled himself during this offseason leading up to this trade with the Chicago Bears. But I think one thing we did find out about that Chicago-Pittsburgh game, at least for me, I think the Steelers miss Troy Polamalu a lot more than the Bears are going to end up missing Brian Urlacher. Let's face it, Urlacher had not been the player that he had been early in his career. I think the Bears can withstand that hit, believe it or not, defensively. Offensively, it's going to be a work in progress. I still think these receivers aren't polished enough for Jay Cutler, not like he was accustomed to in Denver. But they had to win this game. This team could not go 0-2. They very easily could have won week 1 and lost week 2. When the smoke cleared, they needed to be 1-1.
But here's my concern with Chicago. Jay Cutler's never had a running back who's been the featured player in the offense.
Right.
Can they coexist? Because we haven't seen Matt Forte be the player that he needs to be for Chicago to win. Can they coexist?
They're going to have to.
But can they?
You don't win.
The same way you can't say
you don't
the
win
word
ball
if
games
in the
in
NFL.
Chicago in December and January or November by throwing the ball.
But isn't that why they brought in Jay Cutler? So we can win football games in
Well,
December
I think they
throwing the
needed
football.
balance. They recognized that even from last year. Forte had a brilliant season, but ultimately they didn't trust Kyle Orton to lead the team down the field in key moments. Now they've got a gunslinger in Jay Cutler. He's going to make big mistakes. We know that. He did in Denver. We saw it last year in big moments. Cutler couldn't get it done. Change of scenery. They lost 4 in a row, including a game that I worked late in the season against Buffalo that they had no right to lose. With San Diego flying home, hoping on a wing and a prayer.
At home in Denver.
Exactly, that they would have a chance to make the playoffs. So Cutler, again, his mojo has to change. There's just something right now that's very unlikable about him, and maybe he can win some fans over in the Windy City.
By the way, you can watch the most genuine and most complete 2-0 teams. You just mentioned Denver. We didn't mention Denver as the most complete 2-0.
Again, opponents.
Maybe they're better than we thought, but who knows? We'll have to see when we're not going to tell this weekend because they play Oakland here in Week 3, but we'll see. All right, folks, for more of the End Zone, be sure to check it out here on CBSSports.com, including the return of Michael Vick. And again, who is the most complete 2-0 team? There's 9 of them. Figure it out and see what you think. See if you agree with us. For Clark Judge and Ian Eagle, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.